That one's amazing.
Would you look at
I've made
that?
it my job to add like 3 or 4 of them before every single DAO meeting. So we
That's
always
awesome.
have fresh ones.
All right, guys. So I am now recording, and we'll go ahead and kick this off. So welcome everyone to another week of Builders Office Hours. I don't know what episode number we are on, but we're starting to get up there. And as is true for both Builders Office Hours and IOH and all the other office hours in the Graph ecosystem, this is being recorded. So just be mindful of that. Should you wish to participate, your voice may end up on YouTube somewhere. So today we're going to be going through some of the recent updates with both GraphNode and Graph tooling, just to give builders a good sense of what fun new things they're able to start integrating inside of their subgraphs. Um, so I will go ahead and share my screen. If I can get a thumbs up when it pops up.
Yep, can see your Discord.
Wonderful. Good. Perfect. Okay, good. So there's been a lot of updates with GraphNode over the past. Oosh, I would say probably, even like the last 6 months, there's been a lot of cool stuff added that, just looking around at some of the subgraphs that are deployed on the network and a lot of the questions being asked, there's different features that people don't necessarily know that they can start doing. And so I wanted to go through some of these, and I'm going to start with GraphNode version 30 because there's some fun stuff inside there. And then we'll kind of work our way into present time with a upcoming change of GraphNode 32, which we got some release notes on this morning. So with GraphNode 30, and keep in mind, as you're building subgraphs, it's important to look at what is the latest version of GraphNode that's supported on the network, right? We're about to have GraphNode version 32, but that's not necessarily utilized by all indexers. So if you start to incorporate some of these features, just recognize that on the mainnet, not all indexers will be on that version quite yet. And so it takes a little bit for indexers to upgrade their stuff. There's typically an announcement inside the networks.md file, which says what version an indexer should be on. We don't yet have clarification on what time frame people are required to update, so that's a little bit ambiguous at this point. And I expect some arbitration charter updates at some point, hopefully soon, saying, hey, you have X amount of time to update, and that way we as builders know what we can rely on in terms of indexer support. Also, be mindful that if you are using some of these newer features and you do get query failures, that could be the reason. And also, if you run into that, let me know, just because that's feedback that I would like to provide to some of the different core developer teams. But yeah, here we go. So inside GraphNode version 30, we have the long-awaited OR filters. AND's always been a thing, but OR filters is now released. So for any of us that have been attempting to query, this is the mainnet. Let's just go to Uniswap. Especially for like any DEX, we'll typically have a pools field or a pairs field, and inside those entities we have a token 0 and a token 1. And frequently you want to be able to search for one specific token. So say we want to query the Uniswap subgraph to get the any pools or any pairs, and V2 it's pairs, which utilizes GRT. because you don't necessarily know if GRT is going to be in the token 0 position or the token 1 position. And so you want to be able to utilize an OR filter to say, I want to know where GRT is the token 0 or it's token 1. Or sometimes you have protocols where they have multiple contracts. Like on Arbitrum, we've got 2 GRT contracts, and we're migrating over to the new one, but maybe you want to be able to query for the latest GRT contract or the prior bridged GRT contract. So that can now be done. Inside the where filter, you'll have a little OR thing, which you'll see right here, and you can just click your way through these, as is true with any GraphQL Explorer. So you can say where token 0 is your contract name, or token 1 is that one. And so now it will search for this logical comparison. One note when using OR filters is at a database level that does change your execution plan quite a bit, so that can add some delay on latency. So if you can avoid ORs, it's smart to do so, but they're not always avoidable. So if you can't avoid it, feel free to use it. If there's an easier way to get there, then you may consider that. So yeah, so that's one thing that I don't know if you guys have been in Discord channels and all that stuff, but OR filters have been very frequently requested. And this came out, do we have dates on here? Because it's been out for a little while. That was December, March 1st. Yeah, so it's been out for almost 5 months now, and I still see a ton of questions about it. But feel free to start using these inside of your queries or with the consumers that you guys are working with, because it definitely makes a big difference. The next one, which we have had discussions around in various calls, is IPF file data sources. This one's getting some new features in GraphNode 32, which we'll go over in a little bit. But this is basically to replace kind of the previous method of calling IPFS data inside of your mappings. And so this, inside your manifest or your subgraph.yaml, you'll instead have a data source of IPFS. And it will reach out and pull that information or try to request whatever information is located in the IPFS file. And then it can store that as an entity. One kind of key thing on this that is worth noting is that because the availability of the IPFS file is can't be determined at the time of indexing, it will consistently try to retry getting that file. And so it may not come in at the exact block that the indexer's at. And so with that, we can't necessarily update any of the information inside your other data sources utilizing data from an IPFS file. So that's just something that to think with as you're building through it. Things like building a counter of NFT traits. If you want to know how many gorillas have gold hair or whatever, you won't necessarily be able to store that counter quite yet. And Mac, I know that you've utilized file data sources. Are there any tips and tricks that you wanted to touch on as people are going through this?
So this, yeah, you could do lots of dynamic switches inside of your file data sources, but with this is a whole nother kettle of fish, purely because you can pull in an IPFS file to data source. So it can be used in a lot of really, really cool ways in conjunction with hopefully future releases with initialization handlers. But yeah, you really, with file data sources, you can do one file data source per IPFS kind of mapping, and it's really important when you're doing IPFS, when you're doing file data sources, that you make sure that your JSON that's coming back from IPFS or the data structure is the same. However, if you do a little bit of tinkering, you can allow for one file data source to be used in many, many different mappings or different structures. But this can be used in a lot of really, really cool ways, especially I can see whitelisting. If you want to kind of whitelist a set of tokens or whitelist a set of information beforehand. But yeah, this is tip of the iceberg since it's quite new.
Yeah. And pretty soon we'll start integrating our weave into this as well, so we can start pulling that information as well as IPFS. So very, very excited to see how that one goes. I know that that's also been highly requested inside of some of our subgraph channels. Ooh, and Matt says we're looking at how to add file data sources into substreams as well. That's gonna be sweet. Okay, good. Going to the next one. Sorting by child entities, aka nested sorting. Um, Sometimes you want to be able to sort a primary entity by some of its children, and just to get an idea of what that looks like. Let's say that we wanted to, inside your queries. Let's see, do we have? That's not really going to be a great usage, but I'll show you what it looks like, and then we can go over different use cases. So inside of an entity, you can have sub entities, so liquidity positions or swaps, or in this case we'll just use tokens. Well, tokens isn't an array, that's a single value, so we'll do liquidity positions. So inside the order by section, you now have the ability to go into some of these sub entities. Doesn't have liquidity positions. That's annoying. Okay, so then we'll just say, let's just assume that token 0 was an array. So you might have multiple tokens, right? And you wanted to sort it by name or something like that. You can now order it by the returned value inside a sub entity. Areas where that may be nice is especially when you have queries where you're querying multiple entities and you're traversing through a lot of children, but you want to order it by the TVL of a specific sub entity, or you want to be able to sort the largest markets at the top or something. Inside the lending schema for Uniswap, or for from Masari, off the top of my head, we'll just go Silo because I've used that one once or twice. We helped build this one, so. So inside V3, they have silos, and then silos then can relate to markets. And in Silo's case, they have 3 asset pairings. So you have the primary asset, you have a what's known as the bridge asset, which on Ethereum would be ETH, and then you have a stable coin, which in this protocol it's called Xi. So maybe you want to query the silos, but you want to order it by which specific token has the highest highest TVL. Then you can go into order by and then filter the market so that it filters up to the top. So there you go. That's that one. Okay, good. And then in terms of the other notes here, sorting by child entities, we have that one. And then a lot of this stuff starts to be more applicable to kind of the indexer side of things. So that's what we have as developers, mostly with GraphNode 30. So we'll jump forward to GraphNode 31, which has some more fun stuff. And I believe, yeah, this is where Substream started to make a big splash in the network. Inside 31, we have a new feature for full text searches, which can be combined with where filtering. This is really useful in instances where you're trying to search for a token. What is it? Uniswap.info. So inside your front end, especially this little search bar where you're trying to search for a specific pool or a specific token, this is where full text search starts to get really useful just in populating these, because as they start typing, if you type in the graph, right, these guys are obviously not using it. Oh, there we go. That populated, but it took a minute. Full text search in this case, would make that a much faster experience, because you can see even as I was typing it, I was like, oh, they don't have it. Oh, yes, they do. So I'm pretty sure that this is using an older subgraph with an old spec version and doesn't have full text search and all that type of stuff. But this is just one of those cases where inside of your application, if you have any type of a search bar to look for different markets, or whether it's NFTs and you're looking for specific traits, or whatever it is, full text search is a great way to be able to rapidly get information as the user's typing it. And it, yeah, all in all, helps the user experience feel a little bit more seamless. And then this one is very exciting just on my end, because I've made this mistake many times. Well, not a mistake, but it just kind of bloats the database. We now have a derived fields loader, and I can show you an example of what this will look like. So this is the rocket pool subgraph, and it's pretty common that inside, especially for anything DeFi, where you're trying to calculate the protocol's TVL, or anything relating to token prices, because token prices will change outside of different events, and maybe you want to loop through all of the markets to capture what is the TVL now, because token prices changed 5 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago or whatever. Or an event is emitted and you want to be able to update the TVL for all markets rather than just the one market that had the event. Typically, what people will do is they'll have some type of a protocol level entity, and then a derived field for all of the markets, or a derived field for all of the all the markets inside that protocol. And so previously, what we would have to do is we'd have to store a string of IDs, and that was a manually updated array where you'd have to check, okay, there's a new ID. Let me check and see if it's in the array. If not, go ahead and push the new ID to this field. And what this does is this creates a really long array inside the database, which causes things to start to blob all kinds of quickly. For those of you that haven't looked under the hood on the indexer side, this starts to get it starts to make the database a little bit convoluted with just the amount of information that gets stored in each record. And when you have one field that's storing too much data, that starts to cause it to be a blob, or a binary large object. And so then every field inside or every row or every record inside that table starts to get to be really big, because it inherits the size of the largest record. And especially with the way that we have archive records, this can add up pretty quickly. For anyone who hasn't seen, this is just inside the database. Okay, good. So inside the database, after you're saving your entities and all that stuff, we have archival records. And so what that means, let's just use validator ID equals 2. Okay, good. So here we have a single entity, right? Validator 2 is the ID. But we have multiple versions of this entity. Each time something changes, right? In this case, this is the polygon root subgraph. So it's looking at, whenever the validator has changes in, their delegation or whatever, right? So whenever there's a change to the entity, rather than updating the record, we essentially end the record and insert a new record. And so it'll start off, let me also order this. Okay, good. So here we can see the first time that this entity came about was at this block, and then by this block something changed. And then this second record was then inserted. And then by this block, something else, changed once again, and now we have this record, et cetera, et cetera. So every entity, let's just do a quick count. Oh, we don't need my order by. So this one entity has 2,700 records inside of it, because that's how many changes happen to this entity. Now, when you have an array, bringing it back to this specific point, when you have an array, if you're causing each record to blob, and you're having thousands or tens of thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands of records, that's just going to use a lot of space inside the database. So this new derived fields loaders is pretty nifty. So rather than storing the ID just as an array, we can instead utilize our derived field here. So inside of our mapping, which one was it? I think it's this one. Okay, good. So inside of our mapping, what we're doing here is we're taking, creating a variable for node. This could be your market or whatever it is. And so we load that entity. And then here I want to reference all of the derived fields of mini pools. So inside my schema, this is my derived field. So then what you can do is you can say, okay, great, node.minipools.load, and that's going to then get all of the derived fields and then shove it into this variable. And even cooler, it's, you're getting them as the entity or as the intended entity. So an array of mini pools rather than an array of strings where you then have to go and load them one by the database. So then you can pass this array into, whatever thing that you intend to loop through, whether that's calculating TVL or whatever. And then you have just kind of your normal loop, your for loop where it just goes through, and then you're just looking at the index of that array as you're moving through it. So that's just an example of that, but I strongly recommend utilizing this rather than manually keeping track of various arrays and all that type of stuff, because the way in the database it handles derived fields very differently than it does, just normal arrays. So that's that one. Any questions on the derived fields loader?
One question. So if you don't run the load, will it just iterate over the IDs? Sorry if I missed that.
I don't think so.
Also, just to add, this is a seriously
Oh
cool
my God.
addition.
I was so
Yeah.
excited when I saw it.
Game changer.
Yeah. No, it doesn't do that. But after you add load, right? If you want access to the IDs, you have that field. Node.minipools, we'll just say first one inside my array, and now you have access to the ID and all of the different attributes for that entity. Yeah, which
Very cool.
is
I'd be
amazing.
curious to know what the impact on sync time would be running that dot load.
Yeah, it's a good question. I know that in Graph Node 32 there's something in there for improving some of the cache, the way that information caches so that you can re-reference it. I don't know, but I'd love to run some speed tests and see what that looks like. In terms of the loop, I mean, I would imagine that, because previously, rather than just throwing in your entire array of your intended entities, you instead have to throw in the ID, and then inside your loop, you end up, you know, doing something like mini pool, oops, load, and then you have your array index. And so then this could cause, you know, a ton of different fetches to the database to get a specific entity as you're looping through. And that's just a lot of requests that's being sent to and fro. So eliminating that and gathering it all in a single request, that one request will presumably take longer because it's sending more information, and presumably it's probably going to be sending some information that you may not want, but doing it all at once in a batch is probably going to be more efficient than, you know, loading 100 different values individually, and that also scales a lot healthier. So you know, if you're looping through 30 entities, you know, that's not as bad. But once you start looping through thousands of entities, or in Rocket Pool's case, we're loading one for each mini pool, so they're probably up to like 10,000 mini pools or so, and looping through all of that information is just like it's a little bit rough, especially when you
Yeah.
start looking at looping through like user level data. If you're trying to calculate things like stake positions or whatever, and you have to loop through that to multiply it by the token value to get what is the current holding of that user. A lot of that wasn't really feasible with subgraphs because it uses so much resources to process something like that. So
On the flip side, it would mean that you're loading all of that information into memory during
correct.
the yeah. So it's a little bit of a trade-off, but it's a better trade-off I can see.
Yeah, I think both sides have their pros and cons, but I agree. I think this method has a lot more pros than cons. And you do still have the option to manually keep your array. But yeah, it'd be interesting to do some testing on this and just seeing, you know, how can we break this? I love breaking things. Okay, awesome. So we'll go back to this one. So that was the Derived Fields loader. Definitely looking forward to using this both as a developer and looking forward to seeing more people use it from my role as an indexer. And I know that indexers will love us if we start utilizing this. So yeah, definitely putting a plug in for that one. Okay, good. We've got a lot of items that mostly affect indexers, so we'll kind of skip through that. If you have any questions on that, we can discuss those in indexer office hours. Different performance improvements, batched writes. This is something that is going to happen automatically for us by the indexer, which is really nice if we have a bunch of writes that need to happen, you know, in a single instant. The indexer will be able to start doing those in a batch rather than, you know, trying to save entities one at a time in the database. So that'll help sync speeds with our subgraphs. Um, and then Graphman stuff. Perfect. Yeah, if I recall correctly, I think there were various fixes on substreams to help make it mainnet ready, and now it is very mainnet ready. We started to see some more subgraphs, or sorry, some more substream powered subgraphs deployed on the decentralized network. And in the builders DAO, we're working a ton on building out some other ones, but that should be very exciting. So lots of fun stuff upcoming with that. Okay, good. And then as of this morning, I got an email that we have a GraphNode 32 release coming. Blah blah blah. I thought this one was already input. This is the primary one I wanted to go over. So with file data sources, you can now initialize another another file data source from within your file data source. So this one's really useful for especially NFTs where your metadata is also stored in IPFS. And so you have your token, you want to call that file data source, and then upon receiving it, you want to then say, okay, great, now fetch the metadata, right? So being able to just kind of build through those ones should be a lot easier once we have this. And I'm not seeing it here, but I have seen a lot of pull requests and discussion around the derived fields getter and uh, improving some of the way that the information gets cached and all that type of stuff. So we should see that one moving forward. Okay, good. So those are the different graph node updates. And from our role as subgraph developers, again, just be mindful that when graph node 32 does get released, it's going to take a minute for indexers to swap over. Typically, they'll go through and update their testnet environment, and then they'll go and update their production environment and all that type of stuff. So if you see features in here that you want to start utilizing, just be mindful that it may take a minute for indexers to be able to successfully respond to those. On that point, there is a GIP that was posted in the forums talking about query versioning, to where we can start to demand certain versions from an indexer. So let's say that Data Nexus is running Graph Node 30, and you want to start utilizing some of the features from 32. You could essentially filter me out of your search results. So having something like that will just give us a little bit more control over the queries that we're sending through the gateway. Okay, good. That's Graph Node. There hasn't been a ton of different updates inside of Graph Tooling. It's mostly different bug fixes, and a lot of the juicy stuff has been coming in through Graph Node. We've got different networks that we're adding. I saw that Scroll was added into the test. Into, I think it was hosted service. But yeah, a lot of the recent updates over here have been minor changes, small patches, stuff like that. So yeah, so that's what we have in terms of updates. I am interested in getting a sense of how people are uh, how do I word this? I'm interested in knowing how people want to be updated of these kinds of things. A couple of thoughts that I had was within the builders DAO. If we were to make videos of like, hey, here's a new feature, this is me using it. Is something like that helpful, or is it simple enough that we just discuss it in these builders office hours calls to make sure people are informed? But I'm curious to get others' thoughts and getting a sense of what would make things easier for you guys. I know that's kind of an open-ended question, so feel free to type your opinions, or if you want to unmute your mic and just kind of state your opinion, that is workable as well. Yeah, I had a feeling that people would like videos. Yeah, I think that would be something that would be great, especially as we're publishing new releases, having demo videos where people say, okay, great, here's how you utilize derived fields getters, and here's an example of us doing utilizing the file data sources, and here's what you can do with them, and here are the different gotchas. Definitely don't try to do this because it's gonna break. All those types of things are very useful, and we could look at shooting those out in some type of a newsletter, or just referencing them here in builders office hours, and that way you have a chance to watch it as you get interested, or you run into the circumstance where you need to utilize that feature. um, Being able to see someone utilize grafting, if you've never utilized grafting, utilize grafting. It's amazing. Makes life so much better. But the first time I can understand, sometimes it gets a little like, okay, well, where do I put this, and how do I think about the two streams and all that type of stuff. So we can start looking at compiling a series of videos and then uploading those to a single space, and that way, as you run into questions, you can also just go to that channel and search, okay, let me see how someone else utilized these things. Because sometimes it's not easy to find, specific repos that are utilizing the features that you want and all that type of stuff. Another point that's going to be really beneficial to all of us, and more so other people that kind of pop into the network here and there, is I'm sure you guys have seen the awesome QA bot answering questions and all that type of stuff. We had a call recently with the awesome QA team, and we found out that we can upload our documentation into the bot so that it can reference specific points inside of our docs, and that's for subgraphs, for indexers, for substreams, for anything that gets stored in our docs, and it can even link the user to a specific point in our documentation. So if someone has, I think that the question that we see the most inside of Discord is using templating and dynamic data sources, and so it can just send people to that specific page where it goes over that. So having that's going to make our lives easier. Yeah, awesome QA is amazing. I super love it. Okay, good. So that's the primary things that I wanted to touch on. I'll take the feedback of more videos back with us, and hopefully we can inside the Builders DAO start pumping out some fun content for us to utilize. Kind of a shameless plug. If any builders in here are interested in joining the DAO, and you have experience with building subgraphs or substreams or substream powered subgraphs, um, feel free to reach out to us. We're always looking for more talent. We're starting to run into the problem where we're pretty soon going to have more projects than we have developers, which is a great problem, but it is still a problem. So we welcome people who kind of know their way around things, and if you have extra bandwidth and you want to pick up jobs here and there, pick up different gigs, it's a great place to link up with other developers. Okay, good. And we are super ahead of time, which is exciting because we can kind of open up the floor and see if anyone has any questions, whether it's related to this or if anyone has questions on just a project that they're working on and they need help with certain things and they haven't been able to troubleshoot it or anything like that. We can open the floor to that. Or if anyone has anything else building related that they wanted to touch on, feel free to unmute your mics or drop a message in the chat.
Very nice.
I love that one. So good.
Derek, you did a great job. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I look forward to doing these more frequently.
Is the DAO bounty board public, or is it only for builders members?
I think it is private. The only reason why we don't necessarily make it public is that sometimes you have projects that are working on new contracts or new things that they don't necessarily want to make public, and so posting it on our bounty pages just gets a little bit it not only goes out to the DAO and out to us in the graph ecosystem, but it goes out to everyone. So if someone sees some alpha, it can send kind of a wrong concept. But yeah, we have some fun stuff going. So if you are someone who is familiar with building, or you have built some subgraphs and all that stuff, and you're confident in taking on work, definitely reach out to us. And then just as kind of an open question, I'm curious what people are currently working on. What type of subgraphs or substreams are uh, what type of substreams are y'all building? Which sinks? I love it, Mac. It's so good. So Matt, you posted this link, the awesome substreams repo, and it's especially with the composability of substreams. I feel like this is something that's going to be just uh, super important to properly curate what substreams get created, and where people can go and find different Lego pieces that they want to add into their substream, and just make sure that because ultimately if 30 people all create the exact same subgraph with slightly different syntax but the same end result, that's going to be 30 different modules that each indexer is going to have to sync. It's going to use up a lot of unnecessary space. And if we do a good job of curating the substream ecosystem from day one, or from the early days, I should say, I feel like that's going to make a huge impact to the health of things come day 300.
100%. So smart people are thinking about this problem or this challenge. So in the meantime, we have the awesome substreams registry. So, this little GitHub thing. So I encourage people to contribute there. All pull requests welcome. In terms of adding more things that you're working on. And then, maybe we'll have something that's a little more automated at some point in the future. Discovery. One of the things I think we'd like to do from Pinax team is, publish, the module hashes of what seems to be popular that's running through our endpoints. And then if somebody published what is um, the substream that used that module hash, then you'll know which one it is, and then you can use it. So let's see where this goes. But yes, this is an important problem that needs to be worked on.
Yeah,
We have
absolutely.
many, many important things to work on. It's a challenge of priorities.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing I've been thinking a ton about on this is, Masari's work with having a standardized schema and what that means inside of the composable components of substreams.
So Mizari is building a bunch of substreams based subgraphs. So hopefully, though, people will start reusing those Mizari modules.
I'm looking through their compound substream right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if everything is up to date, but I know they're working on more stuff behind the scenes. So stay tuned.
Love it. We'll have to get in the substreams examples. We'll pretty soon have to have a builder's DAO section. I think we've got 3 substream powered subgraphs deployed so far, and a 4th one almost ready. And then pretty soon, I know that Thomas is working on a chain link price feed for all the different Chainlink oracles, which is something that I would expect could get imported into a lot of other substreams.
Cool. Let's see how this ecosystem comes out. Super excited.
Absolutely. Okay.
But anyway, I'd ask the builders to add your stuff to the awesome substream so that people can find it.
Yeah, I'll bring that up inside the desk so that we can start pushing stuff over there. Okay, good. And if there's no more questions, I'll go ahead and make the call that we can end off a little bit early and reclaim almost 11 minutes. Unless anyone else has anything else that they want to bring up. Okay, awesome, guys. Well, thanks for your time today. And then we have another Builders Office Hours next week. Same time, same place. Yep, same time, same place. So I will see you all then.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.